A little boy went missing at a county fair, but 9 years later, his mother recognizes his eyes on a milk carton and makes a shocking discovery. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Emma Collins froze in the cereal aisle of the supermarket, her hand suspended mid-reach for a box of Cheerios. Her eyes had caught something on the side panel of a milk carton on a nearby display, a face that sent electric currents of recognition through her body. Those unmistakable blue-green eyes, the slight dimple on the right cheek, the small birthmark just visible at the edge of the collar. Her shopping basket clattered to the floor, cans of soup rolling across the polished linoleum. With trembling hands, she grabbed the milk carton, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she stared at the face of a teenage boy labeled Lucas Peterson. Below the photo was contact information for a missing children hotline, but Emma barely registered the words. Her mind had catapulted back 9 years to the Springfield County Fair, the sticky cotton candy, the blaring carousel music, the small hand of her 7-year-old son Thomas slipping from hers for just a few fatal seconds. "Ma'am, are you okay?" A concerned store employee approached, but Emma brushed past him, milk carton clutched to her chest like a lifeline. The 10-minute drive home was a blur. Twice she nearly sideswiped parked cars, her eyes darting between the road and the milk carton propped against her steering wheel. When she finally pulled into her apartment complex, she sat motionless in the car, staring at the face that had haunted her dreams for 9 endless years. Inside her small one-bedroom apartment, Emma placed the milk carton on her kitchen counter and stepped back, as if it might suddenly disappear. The walls of her living room were a shrine to Thomas. School photos, vacation snapshots, candid moments of toothy grins, and birthday cakes. 9 years of grief therapy, support groups, and a devastating divorce had not prepared her for this moment when the entire world seemed to fall away, leaving only absolute certainty. That was her son. With methodical precision born of desperate hope, Emma began comparing the milk carton photo with pictures of Thomas. She pulled out magnifying glasses, laid photos side by side on the coffee table, tracing features with her fingertip, the shape of the ears, the slope of the nose. Most convincingly, the small crescent-shaped birthmark visible at the edge of the boy's collar, identical to the one Thomas had on the left side of his neck. "It's him," she whispered to the empty apartment. "It's really him." With shaking hands, she dialed Melissa, her best friend and constant support through the 9-year nightmare. "Em, what's wrong?" Melissa's voice carried the immediate concern of someone who had witnessed too many middle-of-the-night breakdowns. "I found him, Mel." Emma's voice cracked. "Thomas, he's on a milk carton. They're calling him Lucas Peterson, but it's him. I'd know those eyes anywhere." A hesitant pause. "Emma, are you sure? We've been through this before with other leads." "This isn't like the others." Emma was already flipping through her meticulously maintained scrapbook, newspaper clippings, missing person flyers, interview transcripts, every fragment of information related to Thomas's disappearance cataloged with desperate precision. "I'm looking at his birthmark right now. It's him, Mel. I know it's him." "I'm coming over," Melissa said firmly. While waiting for her friend, Emma called Detective Garcia, who had led the original investigation and was now months away from retirement. Their relationship had evolved over the years from professional to something more complicated, a shared burden of an unsolved case that defined both their lives. An hour later, Garcia arrived, carrying a weathered case folder that Emma knew by heart. His salt and pepper mustache twitched as he examined the milk carton, comparing it to childhood photos of Thomas. "The birthmark is compelling," he admitted reluctantly, pulling out a magnifying glass. "But we need to be careful, Emma. This Peterson family has been living in Oak Ridge for years. They're respectable citizens with no criminal record." "Look at his eyes, Garcia," Emma insisted, pushing a kindergarten photo of Thomas next to the milk carton. "That's my son." We'll run it through facial recognition software, check against the age progression photos we've done over the years. Emma paced the small living room. 9 years, detective. 9 years of waiting while I kept paying the bills for his cell phone, keeping his room exactly as he left it. Don't ask me to wait another minute. Garcia sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. I'll make some calls, get the wheels turning officially. But no crazy moves, Emma. If this is Thomas, we need to handle it by the book, or any case we build could fall apart. After he left, promising to verify the Peterson family and initiate proper protocols, Emma sat at her computer. She couldn't wait for official channels. Within an hour of focused searching, she had uncovered that Lucas Peterson was the son of Jennifer and William Peterson, an apparently normal family living just 80 miles away in Oak Ridge. William worked in insurance. Jennifer volunteered at the local library. Lucas attended Oak Ridge Middle School and played baseball. A normal family, a stolen life. The next morning, Emma called in sick to the accounting firm where she'd worked since the divorce. By noon, she was parking her Honda Civic across from Oak Ridge Middle School, heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the building's front entrance. School would be letting out soon. The dismissal bell rang at 3:15. Emma's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles turned white as groups of teenagers spilled out of the building, laughing and shoving one, another, and then, there he was. Taller, his face losing the roundness of childhood, but unmistakably Thomas. He walked with a slight slouch, backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing at something a friend said. Before she could think better of it, Emma was out of her car, crossing the street. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings about restraining orders and accusations of harassment, but 9 years of maternal instinct overrode all caution. Thomas! The name burst from her lips before she could stop herself. The boy turned, confusion clouding his features. Those eyes, Thomas's eyes, stared at her without recognition. Sorry, I think you have the wrong person, he said politely. My name's Lucas. Emma took an involuntary step forward. No, you're Thomas. Thomas Collins. You disappeared at the Springfield County Fair 9 years ago. I'm your mother. The boy backed away, alarm spreading across his face. Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Lucas Peterson. Is everything okay here? A woman approached rapidly from a nearby parked SUV. Jennifer Peterson. Emma had memorized her face from social media photos during her research. She placed a protective arm around the boy's shoulders. Lucas, do you know this woman? She called me Thomas, Lucas said, his voice uneasy. Says I'm her son or something. Jennifer Peterson's eyes narrowed, a flash of something, fear, crossing her features before hardening into maternal defense. I think you should leave, she said to Emma, already steering Lucas toward their vehicle. Before I call the police. He has a crescent-shaped birthmark on the left side of his neck, Emma called desperately as they retreated. Just below his collar, he was wearing a blue Spider-Man t-shirt when he disappeared. He's allergic to strawberries. Jennifer Peterson froze momentarily, then quickened her pace, practically shoving Lucas into the SUV. As they drove away, Emma managed to memorize the license plate, WXP 472. Back in Springfield that evening, Emma faced a furious Detective Garcia in her living room. What the hell were you thinking? He demanded, pacing like a caged animal. You can't just show up at a kid's school. They could flee, destroy evidence, lawyer up. Do you have any idea how you've just complicated this investigation? Then do your job, Emma shouted back, beyond caring about propriety or procedure. Use the DNA we collected 9 years ago. Prove that's my son. Garcia ran a hand through his thinning hair, anger giving way to exhausted determination. The Peterson family has already called Oak Ridge PD about a disturbed woman harassing their son. But your stunt actually gave me enough to expedite things. I'm requesting a court order for Lucas Peterson's medical and school records first thing tomorrow. And DNA comparison? That too. But Emma, Garcia's expression softened slightly. Even if the DNA matches, this is going to be complicated. The boy has been living as Lucas Peterson for 9 years. The courts will take that into consideration. He's my son, Emma said simply. Everything else is details. Later that night, emotionally and physically drained, Emma returned from picking up takeout. She knew she wouldn't eat. The moment she reached her apartment door, she sensed something wrong. The door was slightly ajar, though she distinctly remembered locking it. Hand trembling, she pushed it open. Inside, her sanctuary of Thomas's memories had been ransacked, photos scattered across the floor, albums rifled through, drawers upended. On the kitchen table, weighted down by Thomas's favorite childhood toy, a small red dinosaur, was a simple note written in block letters. He is ours now. He always was. Emma stood frozen in the doorway of her violated apartment, the note's threatening words burning into her mind. Her sanctuary, the only place where Thomas still existed in the world, had been desecrated. Photos lay scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, albums had been emptied, and drawers upended in a violent invasion of her most sacred memories. "Don't touch anything else," Detective Garcia instructed firmly as he arrived with 2 uniformed officers and a forensics technician. His expression darkened when he saw the state of the apartment. This changes everything. Whoever did this is sending a message. They know we're onto them. Emma watched numbly as the forensics tech carefully lifted the note with gloved hands, placing it into an evidence bag. "They used his dinosaur," she whispered, pointing to the small red toy. "Rex. Thomas named him Rex because dinosaurs are always named Rex," Garcia finished gently. He had heard the story many times over the years. "It's not very original, but," he insisted, "it was perfect." The officers methodically photographed the scene, dusted for fingerprints, and collected footprint impressions from the carpet. Emma remained standing in the kitchen doorway, arms wrapped tightly around herself, unable to process how quickly her life had been upended again. "You can't stay here tonight," Garcia said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Is there somewhere you can go? Melissa's, maybe?" Within the hour, Emma found herself curled on Melissa's living room sofa, with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a mug of tea growing cold on the coffee table. Sleep eluded her completely. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the ransacked apartment, the threatening note, and Lucas Peterson's confused face as she'd called him Thomas. "What if I scared them into running?" she asked when Melissa brought fresh tea at 3 a.m. after finding her still wide awake. "What if they disappear with him again and I never—" "Garcia has officers watching their house," Melissa assured her, sitting down beside her friend. "You said yourself they're established in Oak Ridge. Jobs, school, community ties. People like that don't just vanish overnight." Dawn brought a call from Garcia, requesting Emma's presence at the police station for an urgent meeting. The night's investigation had yielded worrying developments. The surveillance team lost visual on the Peterson house around midnight, Garcia explained grimly when Emma arrived, dark circles under her eyes matching his own. When officers approached this morning, the neighbors confirmed the family left in a hurry around 1 a.m., packed suitcases in their car and drove off. Emma felt her heart constrict. "They're running because of me." "You couldn't have known they'd react this way," Garcia said, though his tone lacked conviction. Officer Johnson interviewed neighbors this morning. One elderly man mentioned they have a cabin somewhere near Pinecrest Lake. They apparently go there on weekends fairly regularly. "Then what are we waiting for?" Emma demanded, already rising from her chair. Garcia motioned for her to sit back down. "We're preparing search warrants now, but these things take time. Judge Collins wants more substantive evidence before authorizing a raid on the property. While you wait for paperwork, my son could be halfway across the country." Before Garcia could respond, Emma's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered and put it on speaker at Garcia's urgent gesture. "Please stop pursuing us," came a woman's voice, strained but controlled. Emma immediately recognized it as Jennifer Peterson's. "Lucas is not your son. We have legal adoption papers. You're frightening our child." "Adoption!" Emma nearly shouted while Garcia frantically signaled to a technician to trace the call. "Thomas was kidnapped. There was never any adoption." "We've given him a good life," Jennifer continued, her voice breaking slightly. "A stable home, good schools. He's happy." "You stole him from me," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "Do you have any idea what these 9 years have been like?" "I'm sorry for your loss, truly," Jennifer replied. "But Lucas is our son now. He doesn't remember you. Please, for his sake, let him in, go." The call ended abruptly. Garcia immediately conferred with the technician, who nodded in confirmation. They'd managed to triangulate the call to an area near Pinecrest Lake. "That's enough for the warrant," Garcia said, already reaching for his phone. "We'll have officers at the cabin within the hour." While the operation was hastily prepared, Emma met with Catherine Winters, a specialist in custody law whom Garcia had called in as a consultant. The elegant attorney's expression was sympathetic, but pragmatic as she explained the legal complexities ahead. "Even with DNA confirmation, the courts will have to consider Lucas's psychological well-being," she explained carefully. "He's been raised as Lucas Peterson for 9 years. That's the only identity he knows." "And what about my well-being?" Emma countered, her voice rising. "My marriage ended because neither of us could bear the weight of losing our child. I've spent 9 years in a half-life because someone decided to steal my son from me." Catherine nodded, understanding the emotion but remaining professionally composed. "I'm not saying you won't eventually get custody. I'm saying that if this boy is indeed Thomas, the transition will need to be handled with extreme care. The courts will likely mandate counseling, supervised visits, a gradual integration." "How gradual?" Emma asked, dread settling in her stomach. "Months, possibly years, and that's assuming the Petersons don't fight it." 3 hours later, Emma sat in Garcia's office, anxiously waiting for news from the cabin raid. When his phone finally rang, she nearly jumped out of her chair. "They found evidence," Garcia reported after a brief conversation. "The cabin was empty. The Petersons had already moved on, but they left in a hurry. Officers discovered a hidden compartment in the basement containing forged documentation, including false birth certificates." "For Thomas?" Emma asked. "For Thomas and others," Garcia replied grimly. "There were records pertaining to at least 3 other missing children from different states. This is bigger than we thought, Emma. The Petersons may be connected to an organized trafficking network." The revelation sent chills down Emma's spine. Where would they take him now? She got her answer 4 hours later when Garcia burst into the conference room where she'd been waiting. Border Patrol stopped them trying to cross into Canada at the Niagara Falls crossing. William and Jennifer Peterson are in custody, and Lucas, or Thomas, is being temporarily placed in state care until we sort this out. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Is he okay? When can I see him?" "He's physically fine, but understandably confused and upset," Garcia cautioned. "A family court judge has authorized a supervised meeting tomorrow, but Emma..." His expression grew serious. "You need to prepare yourself. This boy has been raised as Lucas Peterson for 9 years. He has no memory of you or his life as Thomas Collins." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparations. Emma met with Dr. Marianne Foster, a child psychologist specializing in trauma, who provided guidance on approaching the first meeting. "Don't expect recognition or immediate connection," Dr. Foster warned gently. "Don't push memories or reminisce about times he doesn't remember. Just focus on establishing trust. That's the foundation for everything else." Despite this preparation, nothing could have readied Emma for the moment she walked into the sterile visitation room at the Family Services Center and saw her son sitting at a table, arms crossed defensively, refusing to meet her eyes. "Hello, Lucas," she said softly, using the name he knew, though it pained her. "I'm Emma." The boy glanced up briefly, his familiar blue-green eyes now cold with hostility. "They say you think I'm your son." "I believe you are, yes," Emma replied carefully, following Dr. Foster's coaching. "But I understand this must be very confusing for you." "My parents didn't do anything wrong," Lucas stated flatly, his jaw set in defiance. "I don't know who you are, and I don't want to know." Emma fought back tears, nodding slowly as she took a seat across from him, maintaining the distance the social worker had recommended. "Would it be okay if I just sit here with you for a little while? We don't have to talk if you don't want to." Lucas shrugged, staring at the wall behind her. The supervised visit continued in uncomfortable silence, with Emma occasionally making gentle, non-threatening observations that received minimal responses. After 30 excruciating minutes, the social worker indicated their time was up. As Emma stood to leave, she couldn't help herself. "I've missed you every single day for 9 years," she said softly. Lucas finally looked directly at her, his expression a complex mixture of confusion, anger, and something deeper she couldn't quite identify. "My name is Lucas Peterson. I already have a mother." 2 days later, Emma received the call she had been waiting for. The DNA results had come back with a 99.9% match. Lucas Peterson was indeed Thomas Collins. The relief was overwhelming but short-lived. The family court judge determined that, due to the unique circumstances and potential psychological trauma, Lucas Thomas would remain in state custody while a transition plan was developed by mental health professionals. Meanwhile, interrogations of the Petersons revealed a heartbreaking complexity to the situation. Jennifer had suffered multiple miscarriages and failed adoption attempts before connecting with a questionable intermediary who promised to expedite the process. William admitted to having suspicions about the legality of the adoption, but convinced himself they were providing a good home for a child in need. During Emma's next supervised visit, Lucas seemed marginally less hostile, though still guarded. "Dr. Foster says you kept my room the same all these years," he said abruptly after several minutes of silence. Emma nodded, careful not to show too much eagerness at this small opening. "Yes, everything is just as you left it." Lucas fidgeted with the sleeve of his sweater. "What was I like when I was little?" Emma's heart soared at the question. Carefully, she shared a few simple anecdotes. How he loved dinosaurs, hated green vegetables, and insisted on wearing mismatched socks because matching is boring. As she spoke, Lucas's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then, without warning, his breathing quickened, and he pressed his palms against his eyes. I can't breathe," he gasped. The social worker immediately intervened, recognizing the signs of a severe panic attack. Emma was ushered from the room as medical personnel were called in, her last glimpse of her son curled in on himself, shaking uncontrollably. "Pushing memories too quickly can cause severe psychological distress," Dr. Foster explained afterward. "His mind has built walls to protect itself. We need to dismantle them slowly, brick by brick." That evening, as Emma sat alone in Melissa's guest room where she was still staying, a knock came at the front door. Melissa had gone out for groceries, so Emma answered it herself, instinctively grabbing a kitchen knife when she saw William Peterson standing on the doorstep, his face haggard, his clothes rumpled. "Don't scream," he said quickly, holding up his hands to show he was unarmed. "I'm out on bail. I didn't come to threaten you." Emma kept the knife raised, her hand shaking. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't call the police right now." "Because you need to know. Jennifer and I aren't the only ones involved," William said urgently, maintaining his distance. "There are powerful people in this network. Lucas knows things. He's seen people. That's why we were running." Before he could elaborate further, the window behind Emma shattered as gunshots tore through the quiet suburban night. William lunged forward, pushing Emma to the ground as more bullets sprayed across the room, his body jerking violently as he took the impact meant for her. Blood spattered across the living room as William Peterson's body jerked violently, taking bullets meant for Emma. She screamed, finding herself pinned beneath his weight as glass continued to shatter around them. Within seconds, screeching tires announced the shooter's rapid departure, leaving behind a nightmarish scene of broken glass and blood-soaked carpet. "William! William!" Emma shook him desperately as his eyes fluttered. Melissa's pristine living room now resembled a war zone. Blood pooled beneath William's shoulder and torso, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Paramedics arrived within minutes, along with Garcia and a swarm of officers who quickly established a perimeter around the house. Emma watched in shock as William was loaded onto a stretcher, oxygen mask covering his face, his final urgent warning left unfinished. "Who knew you were staying here?" Garcia demanded, his voice sharp with concern as EMTs checked Emma for injuries. "This address wasn't in any official reports." "No one except you and Melissa," Emma replied, wincing as an EMT cleaned a glass cut on her arm. William must have been followed. At the hospital, the gravity of the situation became clear as FBI agent Rivera introduced himself, taking over the case officially. Tall and impeccably dressed, Rivera exuded authority as he explained that what had begun as a missing child case had escalated into something far more sinister. "The attempted murder of a witness and a civilian points to organized crime," Rivera explained in the sterile hospital waiting room. "We believe the Petersons were part of a sophisticated trafficking network disguised as an international adoption agency." Emma struggled to process this information as a doctor emerged to update them on William's condition. He's stabilized but critical. 2 bullets to the torso, 1 narrowly missing his heart. He's being prepped for surgery now. Back at the police station, Rivera announced that Emma and Lucas would be placed under formal police protection. "We're moving both of you to a safe house until we can identify and apprehend everyone involved in this network." By dawn, Emma found herself in a modest ranch house on the outskirts of town, accompanied by 2 officers stationed outside and Agent Rivera coordinating security from within. The house felt sterile and impersonal, beige walls, generic furniture, and windows covered with heavy curtains that blocked all natural light. "When will Lucas be brought here?" Emma asked, pacing the small living room. "Tomorrow, possibly," Rivera replied, checking security monitors. "He's been informed of the situation and is currently with a trauma specialist. Dr. Hannah Williams is the best in her field. She specializes in children who've experienced identity disruption." Later that afternoon, Dr. Williams arrived at the safe house to brief Emma. A petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, she didn't sugarcoat Lucas's condition. "He's built walls to protect himself," she explained, spreading out several of Lucas's drawings on the coffee table. "There are memory fragments emerging in his artwork. See these recurring motifs? The Ferris wheel, these spiral shapes that resemble a roller coaster, and this red triangular form that appears in several drawings." Emma's breath caught. "The Ferris wheel was where we took our last photo together before he disappeared. And the red shape, could it be his dinosaur toy? Rex?" Dr. Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Possibly. The mind often preserves emotional memories even when conscious recall is blocked. But he's actively resisting these memories. They threaten the identity he's constructed as Lucas Peterson." The next morning, Lucas arrived with a social worker, his posture defensive as he entered the unfamiliar house. Emma had prepared his room carefully, following Dr. Williams's advice to keep it neutral, no photos or memorabilia that might overwhelm him. "Hi, Lucas," Emma said softly, maintaining the distance Dr. Williams had recommended. "There's a TV in your room if you want some time alone, or we could have lunch in a little while." Lucas gave a small nod, clutching his backpack tightly as he followed the social worker to his room. The door closed with a decisive click, leaving Emma standing in the hallway, heart aching. Dr. Williams began daily therapy sessions with Lucas at the safe house, sometimes including Emma, and sometimes working with Lucas alone. During one joint session 4 days after his arrival, Lucas unexpectedly mentioned his fear of roller coasters. "I hate how they make my stomach feel," he muttered, fidgeting with a stress ball, like I'm going to throw up. Emma exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Williams. "I understand that feeling," she responded carefully. "Some rides can be really scary." "Did I ever go on one?" Lucas asked suddenly, looking directly at Emma. "Before?" "Yes," Emma replied, her voice gentle. "When you were 5. The ride got stuck at the top for a few minutes. You were terrified." Something flickered in Lucas's eyes, recognition perhaps, but just as quickly vanished behind his carefully maintained wall of indifference. Meanwhile, the investigation into the trafficking network accelerated. Garcia arrived at the safe house with news that the intermediary who had delivered Thomas to the Petersons had been identified as James Mercer, a respected attorney specializing in international adoptions. "We have a warrant for his arrest," Garcia explained, spreading photographs across the kitchen table after Lucas had gone to bed. His firm has facilitated dozens of expedited adoptions over the past 15 years. The next morning, Rivera arrived with grim news. Mercer was found dead in his office last night. Apparent suicide, hanging. But the scene doesn't add up. His hands showed defensive wounds, and the suicide note appears forced. "They're cleaning house," Garcia muttered, exchanging a concerned look with Rivera. That afternoon, while Lucas was in session with Dr. Williams, Emma made an impulsive decision. "I want to show him Thomas's room, his real room. Maybe seeing his things will trigger more memories." Garcia immediately objected. "It's too risky, Emma. We can't leave the safe house, and even if we could, a flood of memories could trigger severe psychological distress." "He's turning 16 next month," Emma countered, her frustration boiling over. "Soon he'll be able to legally decide never to see me again, without even knowing who he really is. I can't lose him a second time, Garcia." After heated debate, a compromise was reached. Select items from Thomas's room would be brought to the safe house, toys, books, and clothes that might gently stimulate memories without overwhelming him. The following day, Emma carefully arranged these items in Lucas's room while he was in therapy. His reaction when he returned was a complex mixture of curiosity and resistance. "That's Rex," he said suddenly, picking up the red dinosaur toy with surprising certainty. Then, noticing Emma's hopeful expression, he quickly put it down and shrugged. "I mean, it looks like a dinosaur I had, with the Petersons." Emma fought to keep her voice steady. "Would you like to keep him in your room? He always used to sit on your nightstand." Lucas hesitated, then nodded slightly, placing the dinosaur on the bedside table. As he examined other items, his hand paused over a baseball glove with TC written on the thumb in faded marker. "I play third base," he said quietly, "for my school team." "You always had a good arm," Emma replied, careful not to push. "You could throw farther than kids twice your age." For a brief moment, something like a smile flickered across Lucas's face. But when Emma instinctively moved to embrace him, he recoiled sharply. "Don't!" he snapped, his momentary openness vanishing. "You're not replacing her. You might be my biological mother, but she raised me. She's my real mom." The words cut through Emma like physical pain. "I'm not trying to replace anyone, Lucas. I just want a chance to know you again." Later that week, Emma received devastating news from Catherine Winters. Despite the DNA evidence confirming Lucas was Thomas, the court had determined that his psychological well-being must take precedence. Jennifer Peterson, who was cooperating with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence, would be permitted supervised visits while awaiting trial. How can they allow her to see him? Emma demanded furiously, pacing the safe house living room. She's complicit in his kidnapping. Legally speaking, she's the only mother he knows, Catherine explained gently. To the court, the psychological bond is real, even if it was built on a lie. The first supervised visit between Lucas and Jennifer Peterson was scheduled for the following day at a neutral location. Emma insisted on observing behind one-way glass, though Dr. Williams cautioned against it. Emma stood rigid, watching as Lucas ran to Jennifer, embracing her with an emotional intensity he'd never shown with Emma. Jennifer sobbed, stroking his hair, apologizing repeatedly while Lucas assured her he wasn't angry, that he understood she loved him. "It's not fair," Emma whispered to Dr. Williams, tears streaming down her face. "She stole those years from me. She stole his childhood. Children form attachments to their caregivers, regardless of how those relationships began," Dr. Williams replied gently. "The bond is real to him." That evening, during a joint therapy session, Lucas confronted the question that had been building since the DNA results confirmed his identity. "Why can't I just go back to my life?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "I was happy with them even if they did something wrong. Why does everything have to change because of DNA?" Before Emma could formulate a response that wouldn't sound selfish or bitter, alarms blared throughout the safe house. Rivera burst into the therapy room, weapon drawn. "We have a security breach," he announced tersely. "Move to the panic room now." In the ensuing chaos, Emma lost sight of Lucas as armed men breached the perimeter. Gunfire erupted, security glass shattered, and smoke filled the hallways. By the time the attack was repelled and Rivera's team had secured the house, Lucas was nowhere to be found. "He's gone," Rivera confirmed grimly after a room-by-room search. The northwest bedroom window was broken from the outside. Tire tracks indicate a vehicle waiting nearby. Emma collapsed into a chair, the nightmare beginning anew. "He's been taken again." Garcia handed her a phone that had just chirped with an incoming message. The text came from an unknown number. "The truth is in the red dinosaur." Emma stared at the cryptic message on her phone, her hands trembling. "The truth is in the red dinosaur." The red dinosaur, Rex, had been Thomas's favorite toy, the one he'd clutched tightly through thunderstorms and doctor's visits, the one she'd just returned to him days ago. "What does it mean?" Rivera demanded, peering over her shoulder at the text. "Rex," Emma whispered, her mind racing. "Thomas's dinosaur toy, the one I brought him from home." She spun around, hurrying to Lucas's room where the toy had sat on his nightstand. The small plastic dinosaur was gone, presumably taken with him. "But I have the original," Emma suddenly realized. "The one I found in his room after he disappeared. It's been in a memory box at our old house all these years." Garcia immediately organized a police escort to the Collins family home, a modest two-story colonial where Emma hadn't lived since her divorce from Robert 3 years after Thomas vanished. The house stood silent and slightly neglected, Robert having moved to Arizona after their marriage collapsed under the weight of grief and mutual blame. Emma still had keys. The door creaked open to reveal a home frozen in time. Furniture draped in dust covers, family photos still hanging on walls, a house waiting for a family that would never return intact. She moved purposefully to the attic access in the hallway ceiling, pulling down the folding ladder. "The memory box is up here," she explained to Garcia as they climbed into the musty space. "After Robert left, I packed away the most precious things I couldn't bear to look at daily, but couldn't stand to lose." In the corner sat a weathered cedar chest with a small brass lock. Emma's fingers fumbled with the tiny key she still kept on her keychain. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, lay the original red dinosaur, slightly more worn than the replacement she'd given Lucas, one horn chipped from being dragged along countless floors. "I don't understand," Garcia said, watching as Emma turned the toy over in her hands. What truth could be in a plastic dinosaur? Emma examined the toy carefully, running her fingers along the plastic seams when she felt it. A slight gap along the dinosaur's belly that shouldn't be there. Pressing gently, a small compartment popped open, revealing a USB drive nestled inside. Thomas must have found this the day he disappeared, Emma breathed. He was always hiding treasures in his toys. Back at the police station's secure tech room, the drive's contents revealed a horror beyond anything they'd imagined. Carefully organized folders contained financial records, photographs, and detailed documentation of a trafficking operation dating back 15 years. Most disturbing were the photographs showing prominent Springfield citizens, including Judge Harmon, who had been presiding over Lucas's custody hearings, meeting with James Mercer and other suspected trafficking facilitators. This wasn't a random kidnapping, Rivera said grimly as they scrolled through the files. Thomas was specifically targeted. But why? Emma asked, her voice barely audible. He was just a 7-year-old boy at a county fair. Garcia pointed to a timestamp on one of the photographs. Look at the date, 2 days before Thomas disappeared, and look at the background. The photo showed Judge Harmon and James Mercer in what appeared to be a private meeting at the Springfield County Fairgrounds during setup. My God, Emma whispered. Thomas must have witnessed something. Maybe he took pictures with my phone. He was always playing with it, taking random photos. And they took him to silence a potential witness, Rivera concluded. The Petersons may not have known the true reason they were offered Thomas for adoption. They might have genuinely believed they were giving a home to a child who needed one. The evidence on the drive provided the breakthrough the FBI needed. Within hours, arrest warrants were issued for Judge Harmon and 3 other prominent Springfield citizens. The judge was taken into custody while attempting to board a private plane at the regional airport. Emma couldn't focus on these developments, however. Her only concern was Lucas, who remained missing nearly 24 hours after the safe house attack. Why haven't they contacted us with demands? She asked Garcia as they huddled in the makeshift command center established at the police station. If they took him to silence him, why send the message about the dinosaur? It might not have been the kidnappers who sent that text, Dr. Williams suggested, joining them after reviewing Lucas's case files. Lucas has been showing increasing signs of memory recovery in our sessions. He might have found a way to leave you a clue. Later that night, as Emma dozed fitfully in a chair at the command center, her phone rang with an unknown number. Rivera immediately signaled to the tech team to begin tracing the call as Emma answered, putting it on speaker. "Mom," came a tentative voice that sent Emma's heart racing. "Lucas? Honey, are you okay? Where are you?" Emma fought to keep her voice calm, despite the surge of emotions. "I think I'm at the cabin," he whispered. "The one near Pinecrest Lake. I'm hiding in the basement. They don't know I took a phone." "Who took you, Lucas? Can you see them?" Rivera asked quietly. "There's a man I recognize. He was at the courthouse during my hearing, and there's 2 others with guns." His voice trembled. "They're arguing about what to do with me. They know about the USB drive and Rex. I heard them talking." "We're coming for you," Emma promised. "Just stay hidden. We'll be there soon." "They're coming back downstairs," Lucas whispered urgently. "I have to go." The line went dead, but the tech team had managed to triangulate the call to an area consistent with the Peterson cabin near Pinecrest Lake. Rivera immediately mobilized a tactical team, but warned it would take at least an hour to assemble the necessary personnel and equipment for a safe extraction. "I can't wait that long," Emma insisted, already grabbing her coat. "He called me Mom for the first time. I'm not failing him again." Garcia intercepted her at the door. "This is suicide, Emma. These are professional criminals with guns. You'll get yourself and possibly Lucas killed." 20 minutes, Emma countered. "Give me a 20-minute head start. I know that cabin. I was there during the initial search. I can get to Lucas without being seen. If I'm not out with him in 20 minutes, Send in your team." Against all protocol and better judgment, Garcia reluctantly agreed, pressing his personal sidearm into her hand. 20 minutes, and only use this if there's absolutely no alternative. The drive to Pinecrest Lake was the longest 30 minutes of Emma's life. She killed the headlights as she approached the final winding road leading to the cabin, parking her car behind a stand of trees a quarter-mile away. The night was cloudless, a nearly full moon illuminating the forest path as she crept toward the cabin's rear entrance. Light glowed from the cabin's main floor windows, silhouettes moving inside. Emma recalled from her previous visit that the basement had a separate entrance, a storm door accessible from the eastern side of the building, partially concealed by overgrown shrubs. Moving silently through the underbrush, grateful for the soft pine needles muffling her footsteps, Emma located the storm door. It was secured with a padlock, but the hasp was old and rusted. Using a rock, she managed to break it free with a muted crack that she prayed wasn't audible over the sound of the TV blaring inside the cabin. The basement was pitch dark except for faint slivers of light coming through the floorboards above. Emma pulled out her phone, using its dim light to navigate through stacks of boxes and old furniture. "Lucas?" she whispered into the darkness. A rustle came from behind a stack of storage containers. "Here," came his faint reply. Emma rushed forward, finding Lucas crouched in a makeshift hiding spot between a wall and several large boxes. His face was dirty and tear-streaked, but otherwise he appeared unharmed. "How did you find me?" he asked, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "A mother always finds her child," Emma replied simply, pulling him into a gentle embrace that, for the first time, he didn't resist. They had just started moving toward the storm door when footsteps creaked on the stairs leading down from the main floor. Emma quickly pulled Lucas back into the shadows as the basement light flickered on, revealing Judge Harmon and 2 armed men descending into the basement. "The FBI raid on my house means they found the evidence," Harmon was saying. "We need to move the boy now and meet the others at the airfield." Emma pressed Garcia's gun into Lucas's hand, whispering, "Stay here. I'm going to create a distraction." Before Lucas could protest, Emma deliberately knocked over a nearby box, drawing the attention of all 3 men. As they turned toward the noise, she stepped into the light. "He's not going anywhere with you," she declared, her voice steadier than she felt. "Ms. Collins," Judge Harmon said with remarkable composure, adjusting his glasses, "you continue to be a most persistent problem." "It's over, Harmon. The FBI has the USB drive and all the evidence of your trafficking operation. They're on their way here now." One of the armed men raised his weapon, but Harmon held up his hand. "Not yet." He turned back to Emma. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into. This operation has protected Springfield's interests for years. The occasional unfortunate child is a small price for the greater good." "You stole my son." Emma's voice finally broke with rage. "An unfortunate necessity. He saw something he shouldn't have at the fair that day. Took pictures of a meeting that needed to remain private. We merely placed him with a suitable family." While Harmon spoke, Lucas had slowly emerged from his hiding place, the gun trembling in his hand. When one of the armed men spotted him and swung his weapon around, Lucas instinctively lunged forward, placing himself between the gun and Emma. A protective gesture that shocked them both. "You used to do that when you were little," Emma whispered, momentarily forgetting the danger. "Always trying to protect me, even though you were so small." The brief distraction was enough. The cabin erupted into chaos as Garcia and the FBI tactical team burst through doors and windows, overwhelming Harmon and his men before they could react. In the confusion, Lucas suffered a shallow cut from broken glass, and the sight of his blood awakened something primal in Emma. A protective fury that propelled her across the room to shield him with her body as agents secured the scene. Lucas's fingers trembled as he gripped the small red dinosaur, his eyes fixed on the plastic toy, while his mouth formed a single word that barely escaped his lips. Rex. The basement of the FBI safe house had been converted into an impromptu interview room, where Lucas sat across from Emma, Dr. Williams observing quietly from the corner. In the 48 hours since the raid on the cabin, Lucas had been withdrawn, the trauma of his second abduction leaving him even more emotionally fragile. Emma leaned forward hesitantly, hope fluttering in her chest. "Do you remember what you called him? Your dinosaur?" The openness that had briefly appeared in Lucas's expression vanished instantly. He placed the dinosaur back on the table with deliberate force, crossing his arms defensively across his chest. "I didn't say anything," he insisted, eyes hardening. "And even if I did, it's just a stupid name for a stupid toy." Dr. Williams caught Emma's eye, giving her a subtle nod of encouragement. These moments of connection, followed by forceful rejection, had become a familiar pattern, like waves rolling in and retreating, each one reaching a little further up the shore before pulling back. "That's okay," Emma said softly, respecting his boundaries. "There's no pressure here." Back in the living quarters of the new safe house, a larger, more secure facility on the outskirts of Springfield, Dr. Williams explained the psychological mechanics behind Lucas's behavior. "What you're seeing is completely normal in recovery of repressed memories," she assured Emma. "His mind is protecting him from the psychological upheaval of reconciling two separate identities." "But he remembered the name," Emma pointed out, unable to hide her excitement. "That has to mean something, right?" "It does," Dr. Williams confirmed. "But each remembrance triggers a defensive response. His mind has constructed walls for over 9 years. They won't come down overnight." The following morning, Emma was summoned to an emergency hearing at the courthouse. Judge Patricia Ramirez, who had taken over the case after Judge Harmon's arrest, had a grave expression as Emma entered the courtroom with Catherine Winters at her side. "Miss Collins," Judge Braux, Ramirez began, her tone measured and formal. "The court acknowledges the extraordinary circumstances of this case, including the confirmed DNA match and the criminal conspiracy that facilitated your son's abduction." She paused, shuffling papers before continuing. "However, we must still consider the psychological well-being of the minor. To that end, I am granting Jennifer Peterson's request for supervised visitation while she awaits trial." Emma surged to her feet, unable to contain her outrage. "Your Honor, she stole my child. She's part of the reason I lost 9 years with my son." Catherine tugged at Emma's sleeve, trying to regain decorum, but the damage was done. Judge Ramirez's expression hardened. "Ms. Collins, I understand your emotions run high, but outbursts in my courtroom will not be tolerated. Mrs. Peterson has been cooperating fully with authorities, and psychiatric evaluations indicate that maintaining some contact would be beneficial for Lucas's mental health during this transition." After the hearing, Emma confronted Catherine in the courthouse corridor, her voice echoing off the marble floors. "How can they reward her with visitation after what she did? She knew he was stolen. She lived that lie for 9 years. Catherine placed a calming hand on Emma's arm. "Legally speaking, she is the only mother he knows," she explained gently. "To the court, the psychological bond is real, even if it was built on a deception. Our goal now is to ensure a healthy transition for Lucas, and that might include allowing him to gradually separate from the Petersons rather than forcing an abrupt severing of those relationships." Emma watched through one-way glass later that afternoon as Lucas had his first supervised visit with Jennifer Peterson. The prison-issued jumpsuit couldn't hide Jennifer's frail appearance. She had lost weight during her incarceration, dark circles shadowing her eyes. The moment Lucas entered the room, both of them broke into tears. He ran to her, allowing her to wrap her arms around him in a tight embrace that spoke volumes about their bond. "I'm so sorry, baby," Jennifer sobbed, stroking his hair. "I never wanted any of this to happen to you." "It's not your fault," Lucas insisted, clinging to her. "You didn't know what they were doing. You're still my mom." Each word felt like a knife twisting in Emma's heart. Dr. Williams stood beside her, offering silent support as Emma struggled to maintain her composure. "It's not fair," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She stole those years from me. She stole his entire childhood." "Children form attachments to their caregivers regardless of how those relationships began," Dr. Williams replied softly. "The bond is real to him, and acknowledging that is the first step in helping him integrate his past and present." As the visit concluded, Emma noticed Jennifer whispering something to Lucas that made him look up sharply. The social worker intervened, ending the exchange before Emma could make out what had been said. Back at the safe house that evening, Garcia and Rivera delivered news that momentarily distracted Emma from her emotional turmoil. "We've uncovered financial transfers from offshore accounts to Judge Harmon dating back 12 years, Rivera explained, spreading documents across the dining table. The same accounts show payments to several adoption attorneys, including Mercer, and to court officials in 3 different states. The network is larger than we initially thought," Garcia added grimly. "These people have been trafficking children through fraudulent adoptions for over a decade, targeting wealthy families desperate for children and willing to overlook procedural irregularities." Emma struggled to focus on the investigation when her primary concern remained reconnecting with Lucas. That evening, as she prepared a simple dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Thomas's favorite meal, Lucas surprised her by approaching hesitantly. "Did I have friends?" he asked, his voice small as he leaned against the doorframe. "Before?" Emma nearly dropped the wooden spoon she was holding, caught off guard by his voluntary attempt at conversation. "Yes," she answered carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your best friend was a boy named Ethan. You two were inseparable. Built elaborate Lego cities that took over the entire living room." Lucas nodded slowly, absorbing this information. "I've always been good at Lego," he offered. "Won a competition at school last year." "You get that from your father," Emma replied with a small smile. "Robert, your dad, he was an engineer, always building things." For the briefest moment, something like curiosity flickered in Lucas's eyes, before his defenses reasserted themselves and he retreated from the kitchen without another word. During their joint therapy session the following day, Dr. Williams guided Lucas through exercises designed to help him process his conflicting identities. "It's like there are 2 different people inside me," Lucas admitted reluctantly. "Sometimes I get these flashes, like memories from a movie I watched but can't quite remember the plot." "Those fragments are important," Dr. Williams encouraged. "They're parts of yourself trying to reconnect." Later that afternoon, Emma passed by Lucas's room and spotted him quickly hiding something under his pillow. When he left for his individual therapy session, curiosity overcame her better judgment. Beneath the pillow, she found several of the old family photos she had provided. Pictures of Thomas at birthday parties, playing at the beach, sitting on Robert's shoulders at a baseball game. The discovery gave Emma hope that perhaps, beneath his resistance, Lucas was privately trying to reconcile his past and present. This hope was temporarily shattered, however, during Jennifer Peterson's next supervised visit. "I always knew one day they might come for you," Jennifer said softly as they sat across from each other in the visitation room. The social worker immediately leaned forward, cautioning Jennifer against discussing the case, but the damage was done. Lucas's expression had shifted from comfort to confusion and fear. That evening's news brought another shock. Judge Harmon had been found dead in his cell, an apparent suicide by hanging, though the circumstances immediately raised suspicions of foul play. The investigation had begun to unravel a network that reached into the highest levels of Springfield's power structure, including the district attorney's office and the mayor's closest advisors. Emma found Lucas alone in his room that night, curled on his bed with tears streaming silently down his face. For once, he didn't flinch when she sat beside him. "I dream about the fair sometimes," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "The colors, the noise. Cotton candy stuck to my fingers. I dream about getting lost, but in my dreams I'm always looking for two different people." He looked up at Emma, vulnerability plain on his face. "I don't know who I am anymore." Dr. Williams, when consulted the next morning, suggested a bold approach. "I think it's time for a more direct memory trigger," she proposed. "The county fair opens this weekend for its annual run. It's the same fair where Thomas disappeared 9 years ago. Visiting it might provide the environmental cues his mind needs to bridge the gap between Thomas and Lucas." The plan was quickly approved, though Rivera insisted on elaborate security measures. Plainclothes agents stationed throughout the fairgrounds, surveillance of all entrances and exits, and both Emma and Lucas wearing tracking devices. As preparations for the fair visit got underway, neither Emma nor the security team noticed the hooded figure watching the safe house from the dense tree line adjacent to the property. Through a telephoto lens, the figure methodically photographed everyone entering and leaving the building, paying particular attention to the security rotation patterns and the vehicles parked nearby. Recognizing these flashbacks and dreams is a positive sign, Dr. Williams reassured Emma as they finalized details for the fair visit. "He's beginning to integrate his fragmented memories. The fair might be exactly what he needs to make a breakthrough." Emma nodded, trying to focus on this hope rather than her lingering fear. What if it's too much for him? What if it triggers something he can't handle? "That's why I'll be with you both," Dr. Williams promised, "and why we've prepared with grounding techniques. This is a controlled exposure in what we hope will be a healing environment." As night fell, Lucas stared out his bedroom window at the dark woods beyond the safe house perimeter, unaware of the figure that had been watching him all day. His fingers absently traced the outline of the small red dinosaur as he mentally prepared himself to confront the place where Thomas Collins had vanished and Lucas Peterson had been born. The hooded figure moved silently between the trees surrounding the safe house, crouching occasionally to adjust the telephoto lens on an expensive camera. Every few minutes, the camera shutter clicked softly as the figure documented the guards' patrol patterns, the security camera positions, and the comings and goings of FBI personnel. Particularly careful attention was paid to Lucas's bedroom window, where the boy could be seen pacing restlessly on the eve of his planned visit to the county fair. Inside the safe house, Rivera was briefing the security team for tomorrow's outing, his expression grave as he detailed the complex protection measures. "We'll have 12 agents stationed throughout the fairgrounds, all in plain clothes. 4 at each entrance, 2 monitoring the perimeter, and 2 staying within visual range of Emma and Lucas at all times." Emma listened with growing anxiety, the reality of the danger still present despite Judge Harmon's death. "Are we sure this is worth the risk?" she asked Dr. Williams, as Rivera continued assigning positions to his team. "Lucas's recovery has plateaued," Dr. Williams replied softly. "Environmental triggers can be powerful catalysts for memory integration. The fair represents both the trauma of separation and, potentially, his last clear memories as Thomas." By morning, the security preparations had transformed into a precise military operation. Lucas sat silently in the back seat as they drove toward the fairgrounds, the red dinosaur clutched tightly in his hand. A source of comfort he no longer bothered to hide from Emma. They were flanked by 2 SUVs containing Rivera's agents, with Garcia following closely behind in an unmarked sedan. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to today," Emma assured Lucas as the fairground's colorful banners came into view. "We can leave any time you say." Lucas nodded absently, his eyes already fixed on the towering Ferris wheel visible above the entrance gates. "I've been seeing it in my dreams," he murmured, almost to himself. The Springfield County Fair hadn't changed much in 9 years. The same carnival rides, the same arrangement of game booths and food stands, even the same peeling paint on the wooden cutouts where children pose for photos. As they passed through the entrance, Lucas visibly stiffened, his breathing becoming shallow. "Remember the grounding techniques we practiced," Dr. Williams instructed gently, walking on Lucas's other side. "5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear." But Lucas had already stopped listening. His attention was completely captured by the children's roller coaster directly ahead, a modest attraction with brightly painted cars shaped like dragons that circled a small track. He moved toward it as if pulled by an invisible force, Emma and Dr. Williams following closely behind. "It stopped," Lucas whispered, standing before the ride entrance. "Right at the top. I was scared." Emma's heart hammered in her chest. "Yes," she confirmed softly. "The motor stalled for about 2 minutes. You were terrified." Lucas closed his eyes, his face contorting with effort. "You kept saying it would be okay, that they'd get it fixed. You were holding my hand so tight it hurt." The memory hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Emma wanted desperately to embrace him, but resisted, knowing any sudden movement might shatter the moment. Instead, she simply stood beside him, allowing the memory to unfold at its own pace. After several quiet minutes, Lucas turned away from the roller coaster and began walking purposefully through the fairgrounds, occasionally pausing as if getting his bearings. The plainclothes agents maintained their distance while keeping the pair in sight, communicating via discreet earpieces. When they approached a cotton candy stand with a faded blue and pink striped awning, Lucas stopped abruptly, pointing. "It was here, wasn't it?" Emma nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "You wanted blue cotton candy, not pink. You insisted the blue tasted better." Lucas stared at the stand for a long moment before approaching the vendor and requesting a blue cotton candy. When the sugary confection was handed to him, he tore off a small piece and placed it on his tongue, closing his eyes as the flavor dissolved. A small, involuntary smile flickered across his face, the first genuine smile Emma had seen since his recovery. "Sweet," he murmured, opening his eyes. "Really sweet. I remember the sugar getting stuck in my hair, and you tried to clean it with a napkin that kept tearing." Each recollection felt like a precious gift. Dr. Williams observed from a short distance, allowing mother and son this organic reconnection while remaining close enough to intervene if Lucas showed signs of distress. As they continued through the fairgrounds, Lucas suddenly tensed, his gaze fixed on something or someone in the crowd ahead. "That man," he whispered, his voice tight with anxiety. "I've seen him before." Emma followed his gaze but saw only the usual fair attendees, families with children, teenagers in groups, elderly couples. "Where, Lucas? Which man?" "He was wearing a suit at the fair," Lucas continued, his breathing becoming rapid. "He's gone now, but he was there watching me." Dr. Williams approached quickly, recognizing the signs of heightened anxiety. "Let's take a break," she suggested, guiding them toward a quieter area with benches away from the main thoroughfare. "Lucas, try those breathing exercises we practiced." The rest of the visit proceeded without incident, though Lucas remained more subdued, occasionally scanning the crowds as if looking for the man he'd glimpsed. After 2 hours, Dr. Williams suggested they had experienced enough for one day, and the security team escorted them back to the vehicles. Upon returning to the safe house, they were met with alarming news. During their absence, there had been a security breach. The house had been entered, rooms searched, drawers emptied, and computers taken. Despite the sophisticated alarm system, the intruders had managed to bypass it completely, suggesting inside knowledge of the FBI protocols. "What were they looking for?" Emma asked, surveying the chaos of Lucas's upturned room. "That's what's strange," Rivera replied, his expression troubled. "Nothing seems to be missing. It wasn't a robbery. It was a search." The security breach prompted an immediate protocol change. Rivera ordered the entire team to relocate to a different safe house within the hour, allowing them only enough time to pack essential personal items. In the frantic rush of the evacuation, Lucas held tightly to the red dinosaur Emma had brought him from their old home. "I'm not leaving without Rex," he insisted, when an agent suggested leaving non-essential items behind. The new safe house was a modern lakeside property with advanced security features and fewer entry points, easier to defend but considerably less comfortable than their previous location. As night fell, the team settled into the unfamiliar space, the events of the day leaving everyone on edge. Unable to sleep, Lucas sat on his bed, staring out at the moonlit lake. "I remembered more today than I told you," he admitted, when Emma checked on him before retiring to her own room. "At the fair, when I saw the roller coaster, I remembered falling. Not from the ride, but from something else. A tree in our backyard." "You broke your arm," Emma confirmed softly. "The summer before you disappeared. You were trying to build a treehouse by yourself." "You cried in the hospital," Lucas continued, his voice taking on the dreamlike quality it often held when memories surfaced. "Not when the doctor was there, but later, when you thought I was asleep." Emma sat carefully on the edge of his bed. "I was scared. The doctor said if you'd fallen differently, you could have broken your neck." Lucas nodded slowly, processing this confirmation of another recovered memory. "It's like watching scenes from someone else's home movies," he explained. "I know it's me, but it doesn't feel like me." Later that night, Emma was awakened by the sound of Lucas crying out in his sleep. She rushed to his room, finding him thrashing beneath the covers, clearly in the grip of a nightmare. When she gently shook him awake, he looked at her with genuine recognition for the first time. "I saw it all," he gasped, still half in the dream. "At the fair, the first fair. I wandered away because I saw a man in a suit taking pictures of kids. He looked wrong, like he wasn't supposed to be there. I followed him and saw him talking to the judge, the one who tried to take me at the cabin." Emma's heart raced at this revelation. "You took pictures," she prompted gently. "With my phone." Lucas nodded, his eyes wide. "I hid when they started looking around. The man in the suit said they had to take care of the problem before the ceremony. Then, they saw me." His breathing quickened again. "I ran, but I got lost trying to find you." Recognizing the therapeutic breakthrough this represented, Emma watched as Lucas slowly calmed, finally drifting back to sleep. In the quiet of the room, she wiped away tears of her own, overwhelmed by the progress of the day. As she stood to return to her room, Lucas murmured sleepily, "Good night, Mom." The simple phrase, spoken without hesitation or qualifier, sent a wave of emotion through Emma so powerful she had to grip the doorframe for support. For the first time in 9 years, she had truly heard her son's voice acknowledging her. Emma had barely made it back to her own room to process this emotional milestone when her phone buzzed with an urgent alert from Rivera. William Peterson had escaped from the hospital where he'd been under guard, leaving behind only a hastily scrawled note that read, "They're coming for Lucas. Don't trust anyone." Rivera and Garcia huddled in intense conversation near the surveillance monitors, their hushed voices barely masking their concern about William Peterson's escape. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, the note's warning echoing in her mind. Don't trust anyone. The implications were devastating. Someone within their protective circle was betraying them. How does a man under 24-hour guard just walk out of a hospital? Garcia demanded, running a hand over his weary face. Rivera shook his head, frustration evident in his rigid posture. The guard claims he went for coffee, just 2 minutes. Security cameras were disabled for exactly 3 minutes and 40 seconds. This was meticulously planned. Emma struggled to process this new threat, while still reeling from the emotional breakthrough with Lucas. The precious moment when he had called her Mom now seemed tainted by this fresh danger. She glanced toward Lucas's room, where he had finally fallen into peaceful sleep after his nightmare revelations. We need to move again, Rivera decided, already reaching for his phone. Different team, different location. Peterson's escape compromises our entire operation. No, Emma interjected firmly, surprising herself with her resolve. Lucas is finally making progress. Another move will set him back. We strengthen security here instead. Garcia studied her for a moment, before nodding in agreement. She's right. The boy needs stability. Bring in additional agents if necessary, but let's not uproot him again. By morning, the lakeside property had been transformed into a virtual fortress. New agents arrived before dawn, establishing additional perimeter checkpoints and installing enhanced security measures. Lucas emerged from his room to find strangers in tactical gear stationed throughout what had briefly been a safe haven. "What's happening?" he asked, eyes darting nervously between the unfamiliar faces. His newfound openness with Emma seemed to have receded overnight, replaced by the wariness that had become his default state. Emma guided him to the kitchen, where she had prepared pancakes, Thomas's favorite breakfast. "William Peterson escaped from the hospital," she explained gently. "They're just taking extra precautions to keep us safe." Lucas absorbed this information with surprising calmness, watching the new agents with analytical interest rather than fear. "He wouldn't hurt me," he said with quiet certainty. "Whatever else he did, he always protected me." "I believe you," Emma replied, carefully measuring her words. "But we're not sure who else might be involved or what they might do." Throughout breakfast, Emma noticed Lucas studying the new security personnel with undisguised suspicion. When an agent named Kowalski approached to introduce himself, Lucas deliberately stepped back, positioning himself closer to Emma. "How do we know who's really on our side?" he whispered after the agent walked away. The question reflected Emma's own unspoken fears with uncomfortable precision. Later that morning, a heavily secured video call was arranged between Lucas and Jennifer Peterson. The woman appeared even more haggard than during their in-person meeting, her prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on her diminished frame. "I don't know where William went," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I swear I don't. He wouldn't tell me to protect me." Her eyes fixed on Lucas through the screen. "Are you safe? Are they treating you well?" Lucas nodded, struggling to maintain his composure. "I'm okay." He hesitated before adding, "I remembered things from before, from when I was Thomas." Jennifer's expression flickered with something complex, grief and relief interwoven. "You were always so smart, so observant," she whispered. "Even when you first came to us, you noticed everything." The social worker supervising the call leaned forward, gently reminding Jennifer not to discuss case specifics. The remainder of their conversation centered on neutral topics: Lucas's recent drawings, a book he'd been reading, memories of vacations they'd taken together. After the call ended, Lucas retreated to his room for a private session with Dr. Williams. When he emerged an hour later, his demeanor had shifted dramatically. He approached Emma with cautious determination. "I remembered the day I was taken," he announced, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "There was a man in a suit. Not Judge Harmon, someone else. He grabbed me after I took pictures with your phone. He said I saw something I shouldn't have." Emma felt her heart constrict. This was the most direct acknowledgement Lucas had made of the kidnapping and his previous identity. Dr. Williams, standing nearby, gave Emma an encouraging nod. "Do you remember what you saw?" Emma asked gently. "A meeting," Lucas replied, brow furrowed with concentration. "The judge and some other men. They were looking at photos of children, pointing at them, exchanging money." He looked up at Emma, his eyes suddenly vulnerable. "I thought they were planning some kind of surprise for the fair. I didn't understand what I was seeing." That afternoon, Agent Rivera gathered the core team in the safe house living room, his expression uncharacteristically troubled. "We've identified a potential leak within our protective detail," he announced grimly. "Communications regarding safe house locations have been accessed by an unauthorized party. Someone's been feeding information to the traffickers," Garcia translated bluntly. "Someone on our team." The revelation sent a chill through the room. Emma instinctively moved closer to Lucas, who had insisted on being included in the briefing despite Dr. Williams's reservations. "We've initiated compartmentalized communications protocols," Rivera continued. "No one outside this room will know our next moves." Later that evening, Emma received an unexpected call on her secure phone. The number was blocked, but she immediately recognized William Peterson's breathless voice. "Don't say my name," he warned immediately. "I don't have much time. They're looking for me." Emma moved to a quiet corner of the kitchen, keeping her voice low. "You broke out of the hospital. Why should I trust anything you say?" "Because I discovered who's been feeding information to the network," William replied urgently. "I overheard nurses talking about a federal agent asking questions about Lucas's case, someone who wasn't supposed to have access." "Who?" Emma demanded, her grip tightening on the phone. "I need to show you in person," William insisted. "I have proof, documents, photos, but I can't risk transmitting anything electronically." Against her better judgment, Emma found herself agreeing to a clandestine meeting. William directed her to an abandoned playground 2 miles from the safe house, neutral ground where they could speak briefly. Garcia, who had been watching her with increasing suspicion during the call, confronted her immediately afterward. "Whatever you're planning, don't," he warned, his voice low to avoid being overheard by the other agents. "Peterson is a fugitive. Meeting him could compromise everything." Emma hesitated, torn between prudence and the desperate need for answers. What if he really has information that could help protect Lucas? After several tense moments, Garcia reluctantly agreed to accompany her, circumventing official channels by arranging for a junior officer to create a diversion that would allow them to slip away unnoticed by Rivera and the rest of the team. The abandoned playground stood eerily silent in the gathering dusk, its rusted equipment casting long shadows across overgrown grass. William Peterson emerged from behind a dilapidated equipment shed, his hospital gown replaced by ill-fitting civilian clothes, his face gaunt and unshaven. "Thank you for coming," he said, his eyes darting nervously across the empty park. "I know you have no reason to trust me." "You're right, I don't," Emma replied coldly. "What's this information that was worth breaking the law for?" William reached into his jacket and withdrew a small USB drive. "Everything's here. Names, dates, transactions, financial records tying prominent Springfield citizens to the trafficking network. When Jennifer and I took Thomas," he paused, correcting himself. "When we took Lucas, we had no idea what we were getting involved in. They told us he was an orphan, that his parents had died in an accident." Emma accepted the drive with trembling fingers. "Why help us now? After everything you've done?" "Because I love that boy," William answered simply. "He deserves the truth, however painful." Their meeting was cut short by Garcia's urgent signal from the perimeter. As they parted, William added one final chilling warning. "Be careful around Rivera. His name appears in those files, meetings with Mercer going back 15 years. Back at the safe house, Emma and Garcia retreated to a secure room to examine the USB drive's contents. The files confirmed William's claim, photographs showing Rivera in private meetings with Mercer and Judge Harmon years before, financial transactions linking him to offshore accounts used by the trafficking network. "I've suspected for days," Garcia admitted grimly. "Too many coincidences, too many security breaches that could only happen with inside knowledge." Their grim discovery was interrupted by breaking news flashing across Garcia's phone. Judge Harmon had been found dead in his cell, an apparent suicide, though the circumstances mirrored James Mercer's suspicious death. The pattern was clear. Someone was systematically eliminating everyone who could testify about the trafficking network. Emma's mind raced with the implications as she hurried to check on Lucas, finding him engaged in a rare moment of normalcy, sketching quietly in the living room. "You disappeared earlier," he observed without looking up from his drawing, a remarkably detailed rendering of the county fair Ferris wheel. "The agents were looking for you." "I had to check something," Emma replied carefully, unsure how much to reveal. Lucas finally looked up, his expression more open than she had yet seen it. "I remember more about the fair now," he said quietly. "Not just the day I disappeared. Before that, when I was little, you would let me have 2 cotton candies even though Dad said it was too much sugar." The casual reference to his father, to Robert, and to their shared past nearly brought Emma to tears. "You would be bouncing off the walls all night," she confirmed with a soft laugh. "But you were so happy that it was worth it." The tender moment was shattered by Lucas's sudden, sharp intake of breath. "I remember something else too," he whispered, his face paling. "The man I saw at the fair yesterday, the one I recognized. It was Agent Rivera. He was there 9 years ago too, watching me, before I disappeared." Emma was about to show Lucas the evidence from William's USB drive when he screamed from upstairs. Upon rushing into the room, she found the window open, a hastily scribbled note. "They know about the pen drive," and no sign of her son. Emma's scream tore through the safe house as she clutched the crumpled note in her trembling hand. The empty bedroom with its fluttering curtains told the horrific story. Lucas had been taken again, stolen right from under their noses in what should have been the most secure location possible. "Garcia!" she shrieked, backing into the hallway. "He's gone! Lucas is gone!" Chaos erupted throughout the safe house. Agents converged on the bedroom, weapons drawn, while Garcia rushed to Emma's side, taking the note from her shaking fingers. "They know about the pen drive," he read aloud, his face darkening. "Rivera. It has to be." He immediately began barking orders into his radio, deliberately switching to a secondary channel that Rivera wouldn't be monitoring. Emma collapsed against the wall, her mind reeling with the double shock of Lucas's revelation about Rivera and his subsequent abduction. How could this happen? We were just talking downstairs. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. Agent Kowalski, who had been stationed outside Lucas's window, was found unconscious in the bushes below, a bruise forming at the base of his skull. The security cameras covering that side of the house had been disabled precisely 3 minutes before the estimated time of abduction, the same signature method used in William Peterson's hospital escape. "Professional job," Garcia muttered, examining the disabled security panel. They knew exactly what they were doing and exactly when to strike. In the command center downstairs, Rivera was conspicuously absent, having left just 30 minutes earlier, claiming to check the perimeter guards. Calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. "We need to lock down every road out of the county," Emma insisted, pacing frantically. "Airports, bus stations, everything." Garcia placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Emma, we can't use official channels. If Rivera is involved, he has access to all law enforcement communications. We'd be telling him exactly where to avoid." The realization of how completely they had been compromised hit Emma like a physical blow. "Then what do we do? Just let them take him again? Let them disappear him for another 9 years?" "No," Garcia replied firmly. "We go off-grid. Just you and me, plus a few agents I personally trust with my life." Within 20 minutes, Emma and Garcia had slipped away from the safe house in an unmarked vehicle borrowed from one of Garcia's trusted colleagues. They drove to a small motel on the outskirts of town, paying cash and using false names, where they could examine the USB drive's contents thoroughly, without fear of surveillance. Spread across the bed of the dingy motel room, the printed documents from William's USB drive revealed a trafficking network more extensive than either had imagined. Financial transactions, blackmail material, and most damning of all, photographs documenting Rivera's involvement dating back to when he was a junior agent. "He's been their man inside law enforcement for 15 years, Garcia said grimly, connecting threads between documents, feeding them information, warning them about investigations, occasionally even helping identify potential targets." Emma could barely focus on the documents, her mind consumed with terror for Lucas. None of this tells us where they might have taken him now. A soft knock at the door sent them both reaching for weapons. Garcia approached cautiously, peering through the peephole before relaxing slightly. "It's William Peterson." The fugitive looked even worse than he had at the playground, exhausted, disheveled, and clearly terrified. "They found my hiding place," he said without preamble as Garcia let him in. "Nearly caught me an hour ago." "How did you find us?" Garcia demanded suspiciously. "I've been tracking Rivera for days," William explained, sinking onto the room's only chair. "Saw him take Lucas from the safe house and followed them as far as I could before their convoy split up." He leaned forward, desperation evident in every line of his face. "I know where they probably took him. There's a property, an old hunting lodge about 50 miles north of here. The network uses it for processing children before placing them." Emma felt sick at the clinical terminology. "Processing?" William's expression darkened. "Creating new identities, coaching them to forget their past lives. Sometimes," he hesitated, "sometimes more invasive methods if the children are resistant." "Why should we trust you?" Garcia pressed, though his tone had softened slightly. "Because I failed that boy once," William replied, his voice breaking. "I won't fail him again." Meanwhile, in a sparsely furnished room with boarded windows, Lucas Peterson was employing every technique Dr. Williams had taught him to manage his anxiety. Seated on a narrow cot, he focused on controlling his breathing while surreptitiously examining his surroundings for any potential escape route. The room contained only the cot, a small table with a plastic cup of water, and a chair where one of his captors sat watching him impassively. Through the thin walls, he could hear muffled voices arguing in an adjacent room. "What do you remember about your previous life, Lucas?" the man asked suddenly, leaning forward in his chair. His tone was casual, almost friendly, but Lucas recognized the threat underlying the question. "Nothing," Lucas lied smoothly. "Just what those FBI agents kept trying to make me believe." The man smiled thinly. "I hope that's true. For your sake." He stood, stretching lazily. "The people coming to interview you won't be as understanding as I am if they think you're remembering things you shouldn't." When the man left, locking the door behind him, Lucas immediately began searching the room more thoroughly. The windows were not only boarded, but appeared to be bricked up behind the boards. The door was solid with no visible hinges on his side. The only potential weakness was a small ventilation duct near the ceiling, barely large enough for him to fit through even if he could reach it and remove the cover. Lucas returned to his cot, pretending to be resigned to his situation whenever footsteps passed his door. In reality, his mind was working furiously, drawing on fragmented memories of both his lives, Thomas's resourcefulness and Lucas's careful observation skills combining as he formulated a plan. Back at the motel, Emma, Garcia, and William formulated a desperate rescue strategy. Garcia's few trusted contacts had confirmed unusual activity around the hunting lodge William had identified, including vehicle movements consistent with a security detail. "We can't wait for backup that might never come," Garcia concluded, studying satellite images of the property. "The longer we wait, the more likely they'll move him again. Or worse. The property has a vulnerability," William noted, pointing to the images. "The security is concentrated at the front entrance and main perimeter, but there's a service road that approaches from the rear, through dense forest. It's overgrown and allegedly impassable, but with a four-wheel drive vehicle, we could get within a quarter mile without being detected." Emma studied the satellite imagery, memorizing the layout. How many guards? Based on previous operations I've observed, William replied carefully. Probably 6 to 8, all armed. Garcia checked his weapon and the spare he'd acquired through unofficial channels. Against the 3 of us, not great odds. 4, came a voice from the doorway, where they'd left it slightly ajar for ventilation in the stuffy room. Melissa stood there, arms crossed, expression determined. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out where you'd go, Emma? We've been friends for 20 years. After the initial shock, Emma felt a surge of gratitude for her friend's unwavering support. Garcia, however, was less enthusiastic about adding a civilian to their already dangerous plan. Absolutely not, he insisted. This isn't a rescue committee. We're going up against armed criminals. I've been taking shooting lessons since Thomas disappeared, Melissa countered, pulling a small handgun from her purse. And I'm a registered nurse. You might need medical help once you get the boy out. The argument was cut short by Garcia's secure phone vibrating with an incoming message from one of his trusted agents. Federal authorities had been quietly contacted, and a small team of FBI agents verified to be outside Rivera's influence were being assembled. However, bureaucratic procedures meant they couldn't move officially for at least 6 hours. Lucas doesn't have 6 hours, Emma said firmly. We go now, the 4 of us. The federal team can catch up when they're ready. At the hunting lodge, Lucas had managed to work a loose spring from his cot frame. Using the thin metal, he methodically worked at the screws holding the ventilation duct cover in place, freezing whenever footsteps approached his door. The work was painfully slow, his makeshift tool bending and nearly breaking several times, but determination drove him forward. As twilight descended, Emma, Garcia, William, and Melissa approached the hunting lodge from the forest side, abandoning their vehicle where the overgrown service road became impassable. Garcia led with military precision, having served in the Marines before joining law enforcement. William, surprisingly, displayed similar tactical awareness, suggesting a background more complex than he had ever revealed to the Petersons or authorities. Through binoculars, they observed the property, a large rustic structure with several outbuildings, surrounded by a perimeter of armed guards moving in regular patterns. Lights burned in only a few windows, one of which was conspicuously boarded up. That's where they'd keep him, William whispered, pointing to the boarded window. Second floor, east wing. It's the secure room. Garcia made contact with his federal colleagues who confirmed they were still assembling their team, but would approach from the main road within 2 hours. They'll create a diversion at the front gate, he explained. That's our window to approach from the rear. Inside the lodge, Lucas had finally removed the ventilation duct cover and was assessing whether he could squeeze through the narrow opening when he heard a key in his door lock. Quickly replacing the cover loosely and hiding the spring under his mattress, he sat on the cot with feigned resignation as Rivera entered the room. Time to go, Lucas, Rivera announced, another armed man visible in the hallway behind him. We're moving you to a more secure location. Lucas recognized his opportunity. Being moved meant transitioning through areas of the building that might offer better escape chances. I need to use the bathroom first, he requested, his voice deliberately small and frightened. Rivera assessed him with cold calculation before nodding. Make it quick. While Emma, Garcia, William, and Melissa positioned themselves for the approaching federal diversion, Lucas managed to send a vital signal. In the bathroom, with its small window overlooking the forest behind the property, he had found an unattended cell phone left charging on the sink, likely belonging to a careless guard. In the precious seconds before Rivera grew suspicious, Lucas typed a simple text message to Emma's number, which he had memorized during their time together. Lodge, second floor, moving me soon. 6 men with guns. The message sent just as Rivera pounded on the door. Lucas quickly placed the phone back exactly as he'd found it, washing his hands loudly as a cover for his delay. When he emerged, Rivera grabbed his arm roughly, propelling him toward the stairs, just as headlights appeared on the main road approaching the front gate. Garcia's phone vibrated with Lucas's message, sending a surge of hope through the small rescue team huddled at the forest's edge. "He's found a way to contact us," Garcia whispered urgently, showing the text to the others. "Lodge 2nd floor. Moving me soon. 6 men with guns." "That's my boy," Emma breathed, pride momentarily displacing her fear. The message confirmed their location but added new urgency. If Rivera was planning to move Lucas, their window for rescue was rapidly closing. The distant wail of sirens announced the arrival of Garcia's federal colleagues at the main entrance. Flashing lights illuminated the trees as vehicles approached the front gate, creating precisely the diversion they needed. As predicted, 4 of the 6 guards immediately converged on the front entrance, leaving the rear of the property vulnerable. "Now," Garcia commanded softly, leading the group through the dense underbrush toward the shadowed back of the hunting lodge. They moved silently in single file, Garcia first with his weapon ready, followed by William, who knew the property layout, then Emma, with Melissa bringing up the rear, her nursing bag slung across her body. Inside the lodge, Rivera cursed as the security system alerted him to the front gate situation. "Change of plans," he snapped to his remaining man. "Take him out through the south exit. The van's waiting. I'll deal with whatever this is." Lucas found himself roughly guided down a narrow back staircase, his mind racing to memorize the lodge's layout while appearing docile and frightened. A performance that required little acting, given his genuine fear. The guard's grip on his arm was painfully tight, but Lucas focused on identifying potential escape points, counting the seconds between radio check-ins, noting anything that might help if an opportunity presented itself. Outside, Garcia and the rescue team reached the back of the property unseen. A service entrance stood 20 yards away, illuminated by a single security light. William pointed to a small outbuilding nearby. "Generator," he whispered. "Cut the power, and we'll have about 30 seconds before the backup system engages." Without waiting for approval, William darted across the open space, using the shadows for cover. Reaching the generator shed, he disappeared inside, and seconds later, the entire property plunged into darkness. Alarms immediately began wailing, adding to the chaos already unfolding at the front gate. Garcia seized the moment, racing to the service entrance with Emma close behind. The door was locked, but a swift kick splintered the aging frame. They entered a dark kitchen as emergency lighting flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across industrial appliances. "2nd floor," Emma reminded them, her voice barely audible over the alarms. Following the building plans William had sketched, they located a service stairwell and began their ascent, weapons ready. The sudden darkness had created the perfect diversion for Lucas. When the lights failed, his escort's grip momentarily loosened as the man reached instinctively for his weapon. Lucas acted with the swift decisiveness of both his lives. Thomas's ingrained survival instinct combined with Lucas's tactical awareness. Dropping his weight suddenly, he twisted from the guard's grasp and shoved with all his strength, sending the man tumbling down the remaining stairs. The guard's shout of surprise and pain echoed through the stairwell as Lucas bolted in the opposite direction, racing down a dark corridor illuminated only by emergency exit signs. He could hear shouts and the crackle of radios as the remaining security personnel tried to coordinate a response to both the front gate situation and the power failure. "Lucas!" Emma's voice cut through the chaos, so unexpected that Lucas skidded to a halt at an intersection of corridors. For a wild, disorienting moment, he couldn't determine where her voice had come from, until he spotted movement at the far end of the left passage. "Mom." The word escaped him without thought or hesitation as he sprinted toward her. Their reunion lasted only seconds, a desperate embrace before Garcia urged them toward the exit. "We need to move. Now." William and Melissa joined them from a side passage, completing their small group as they navigated the lodge's labyrinthine corridors toward the kitchen exit. They had almost reached it when Rivera appeared from an adjacent room, his weapon trained directly at Emma. "I can't let you leave," he stated coldly, his aim unwavering. "The boy knows too much." Garcia raised his own weapon, creating a deadly standoff. "It's over, Rivera. Federal agents are already securing the perimeter. Harmon is dead. Mercer is dead. You're the last one standing." Rivera's laugh was hollow. "You think I'm the last? This network reaches further than you can imagine. Judges, politicians, even your own department. The merchandise is too valuable." Lucas flinched at being referred to as merchandise, but a strange calmness had settled over him. Fragments of memory crystallized into understanding as he looked at Rivera. "I remember you now," he said, his voice steady despite the gun pointed at his mother. "You were taking pictures of kids at the fair, not just me. Others too." The accusation seemed to rattle Rivera momentarily, his aim shifting slightly. William noticed the opening and lunged forward, but Rivera was faster, squeezing off a shot that caught William in the shoulder, spinning him to the floor. The distraction was enough for Garcia to advance, forcing Rivera to retreat several steps. "Your federal friends aren't coming to help," Rivera taunted. "They hit an unexpected roadblock. We have contingencies for everything." Emma had positioned herself in front of Lucas, shielding him with her body despite his attempts to pull her aside. The standoff intensified as Rivera's radio crackled with updates from his remaining men. The federal agents had indeed been delayed, but were breaching the perimeter on foot. "You've lost everything," Rivera snarled at Emma. "Your marriage, your home, 9 years of your son's life. Walk away now. Take the boy if you want him so badly, but the evidence stays here." "That's where you're wrong." Melissa spoke unexpectedly from behind Rivera, her voice surprisingly steady as she pressed her small handgun against his back. "The evidence is already out. We've been transmitting everything from Williams Drive to every major news outlet for the past hour." Rivera's momentary shock gave Garcia the opening he needed. He tackled Rivera to the ground, the agent's weapon discharging harmlessly into the ceiling as they struggled. Within seconds, Garcia had subdued him, wrenching his arms behind his back and securing them with zip ties from his tactical belt. "Clear!" Garcia called out, checking Rivera for additional weapons. Lucas rushed to William, who was conscious but pale, blood seeping through his fingers where he clutched his shoulder. "You'll be okay," Lucas assured him with a confidence beyond his years. "It's a through and through, nothing vital hit." Melissa quickly confirmed Lucas's assessment, applying pressure to the wound with supplies from her nursing bag. "He needs a hospital, but he's stable for now." The sounds of the federal raid intensified outside. Shouts, brief exchanges of gunfire, the thump of helicopter rotors. Garcia's phone buzzed with confirmation that the perimeter had been secured and medical teams were inbound. As they waited for extraction, Lucas knelt beside William, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. "Why did you do that?" he asked quietly. "You could have been killed." William's pained smile revealed a depth of feeling that transcended the legal complexities of their relationship. "Because you were worth protecting," he replied simply. "You always were." Emma watched this exchange with tears in her eyes, understanding, dawning that the path forward would never be as simple as reclaiming her son. Lucas was a child of two worlds now, with attachments and loyalties that couldn't be erased by DNA tests or court orders. When the federal team finally reached them, Agent Dawson, the operation leader, quickly assessed the situation. "We've apprehended 4 additional suspects," she reported to Garcia. "Initial evidence suggests connections to trafficking operations in 3 states. This is bigger than we thought." "It always was," Garcia replied grimly, watching as medics attended to William. As they finally emerged from the hunting lodge into the cool night air, Lucas stayed close to Emma, occasionally glancing back at William being loaded onto a stretcher. Helicopter spotlights swept the property, illuminating the scale of the operation that had been hiding in plain sight for years. "What happens now?" Lucas asked, his voice small amidst the chaos of the raid's aftermath. Emma wrapped an arm around his shoulders, careful not to press too hard in case he pulled away. To her surprise, he leaned into her embrace. "Now we start putting the pieces back together," she said softly. "All of them, however they fit." As they walked toward the waiting vehicles, Lucas looked up at the star-filled sky, then back at his mother's face. "I think I'm ready to be Thomas again," he said quietly, "but maybe not all at once." With Rivera handcuffed and the operation criminally exposed, the family finally seemed reunited. However, when Emma, Lucas, and Garcia exited the building, they found William Peterson collapsed near the entrance, bleeding severely after his confrontation with guards. "I need to tell you one last thing," he murmured before losing consciousness. "I need to tell you one last thing." William's voice faded as his eyes rolled back, blood seeping through his shirt, where the bullet wound had reopened during their escape. He collapsed onto the gravel driveway outside the hunting lodge, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles casting his pale face in alternating red and blue. "Medic! We need a medic here now," Emma screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. Lucas stood frozen, his expression shifting between shock and an unexpected grief as he watched the man who had raised him for 9 years fighting for his life. Paramedics rushed forward, gently moving Emma aside as they stabilized William for transport. "BP's dropping," one called out, working efficiently to start an IV. "We need to move him immediately." In the chaotic aftermath, Emma found herself in the back of an ambulance holding William's hand, while Lucas sat opposite, his eyes never leaving the face of his kidnapper, his captor, his father. The complexity of these emotions was written across the boy's face, a testament to the impossible situation he now navigated. "He saved us," Lucas whispered, as the ambulance wailed through the night. "He took me from you, but he saved us tonight." At the hospital, William was rushed into emergency surgery, leaving Emma, Lucas, and Garcia in a sterile waiting room that felt all too familiar after the events of the past weeks. Dawn was breaking when a tired surgeon finally approached them, surgical cap still in place. "He's stabilized," the doctor announced. "The bullet missed major arteries, but he lost a significant amount of blood. He'll recover, though he's still unconscious." The relief that washed over Lucas's face was undeniable. Emma placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, understanding that his world couldn't be neatly divided into villains and heroes. "You can see him when he wakes up," she promised. "Whatever happens legally, I won't keep you from him." 3 days later, as the case against Rivera and the trafficking network expanded to include officials in 3 states, Lucas sat beside William's hospital bed. The older man was propped up on pillows, his complexion still pale but his eyes clear as he reached for Lucas's hand. "I'm so sorry," William said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "For everything. I truly believed you were an orphan when we took you. By the time I began to suspect otherwise, I couldn't bear to lose you." Lucas nodded slowly. "I know," he replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "You were a good dad to me, even if it was all built on a lie." Outside in the corridor, Emma watched through the window, her heart aching with the complicated reality they now faced. Robert, her ex-husband and Thomas's father, had arrived from Arizona the previous day, the shock of finding his son alive rendering him nearly speechless. He now stood beside her, watching the same scene with confusion etched into the new lines of his face. "I don't understand how you can let him near that man," Robert said quietly. "After everything they did." Emma sighed, searching for words to explain what she herself was still coming to terms with. "Lucas Thomas, he has memories and bonds with the Petersons that are real to him. Forcing him to sever those connections would only cause more trauma." The court proceedings that followed moved with unprecedented speed due to the high-profile nature of the case. Judge Patricia Ramirez, who had taken over after Harmon's death, demonstrated remarkable sensitivity to the psychological complexities involved. She granted Emma full legal custody of Lucas Koch Thomas while establishing a framework for supervised contact with the Petersons, who faced reduced sentences in exchange for their complete cooperation with authorities. The boys' psychological well-being must be our primary concern, Judge Ramirez stated during her ruling. The transition must be handled with care and compassion for all involved. Dr. Williams continued daily sessions with Lucas, who struggled to integrate his two identities. 2 weeks after the rescue, during a particularly intense therapy session, Lucas finally articulated the confusion that had been tormenting him. "I don't know how to be Thomas." "Again," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "But Lucas feels like a lie now, too. It's like I'm stuck between two different lives and neither one fits anymore." Dr. Williams nodded understandingly. "Identity isn't something fixed," she explained. "It evolves throughout our lives. You don't have to choose between being Thomas or being Lucas. You can be both, or someone new who honors all parts of your experience." The following weekend, Lucas asked to visit Emma's old house, the home where Thomas Collins had lived until age 7. Emma had been renting it out since the divorce, but had recently notified the tenants she would be reclaiming it. The house stood empty now, echoing with memories as they walked through the rooms together. Lucas paused in the doorway of Thomas's bedroom, which had been converted to a home office by the tenants. Despite the changes, something about the space still called to him. "I had rocket ship curtains," he said suddenly, "and a map of the solar system on the ceiling that glowed in the dark." "Yes," Emma confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. "You wanted to be an astronaut that year. We spent hours making that map together." Lucas nodded, eyes distant as he accessed memories that had been locked away for years. "I think I'd like to have that again," he said finally. "Not exactly the same, but something that feels like both of me." Over the following weeks, as Lucas prepared to return to school, now enrolled as Thomas Lucas Collins, after a court-approved name change, Emma worked to create a home that honored both his past and present. His new room featured elements of both lives. The astronomy theme he remembered as Thomas, alongside the baseball trophies he'd earned as Lucas. Robert began visiting regularly, awkwardly at first, but with growing confidence as he discovered connections with the teenager his son had become. During one such visit, Lucas surprised them both by asking about memories only Robert would know. Trips they had taken together, games they had played before the abduction. "You used to call fastballs zoom-zooms," Robert recalled, laughing. "You insisted it was the proper baseball term and would argue with anyone who said otherwise." Lucas smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "I still think that's what they should be called," he admitted, creating a moment of unexpected levity that bridged their lost years. Jennifer Peterson remained in custody awaiting sentencing, but continued regular supervised visits with Lucas. These meetings were emotional, but increasingly healthy, as both worked with therapists to establish appropriate boundaries. During one such visit, Jennifer finally asked the question that had been weighing on her. "Do you hate me?" she whispered, tears brimming. "I would understand if you do." Lucas considered this seriously before answering. "I was angry at first," he admitted, "but now I mostly feel sad. Sad for everyone. For Emma, who lost her son. For you, who loved me but built that love on something wrong. And for me, who has to somehow make sense of it all." His maturity stunned both women, a reminder of how the trauma had forced him to develop wisdom beyond his years. As Lucas's 16th birthday approached, Emma planned a small celebration that acknowledged the milestone's complex significance. William had been released from prison hospital care to house arrest while awaiting trial, and Emma, after much soul-searching, included him on the guest list with strict supervision requirements. "Are you sure about this?" Garcia asked when Emma shared her plans. The detective had remained a steadfast presence throughout the legal proceedings, his dedication to the case finally bringing him the professional recognition he deserved. "No," Emma admitted honestly, "but it's what Lucas needs, and I'm trying to put his needs first, even when it's difficult." The day of the birthday gathering arrived with tentative sunshine after a week of rain. Lucas had requested a small celebration in the backyard of their newly reclaimed family home, with only those closest to him in attendance. Emma watched from the kitchen window as an improbable group assembled. Robert arranging presents on an outdoor table, Dr. Williams chatting with Melissa, Garcia standing somewhat awkwardly near the grill, and finally, Jennifer and William Peterson arriving under supervision, bearing a carefully wrapped gift. The potential for tension was enormous, yet somehow the gathering found its footing. United by their shared love for the boy at the center, each adult made concerted efforts to set aside their complicated history for a few hours. As twilight fell, Emma brought out a cake adorned with 16 candles. Lucas stood before it, taking in the faces gathered around him. Biological parents, adoptive parents, those who had searched for him and those who had hidden him, all now part of his extraordinarily complicated life. The candles cast a warm glow across his face as everyone sang, "Happy Birthday." When the song ended, Lucas closed his eyes for a long moment before blowing out every flame in a single breath. "What did you wish for?" Emma asked softly, touching his shoulder with maternal affection she no longer feared would be rejected. Lucas smiled, a peaceful expression that suggested internal struggles were, if not resolved, at least quieting. "Nothing," he answered, looking around at the unlikely family surrounding him. "For the first time, I have everything I need, the truth, and a family that, despite being complicated, is finally complete."